Another possibility you can do with Animate is to make an interactive story or interactive game. Choose your own adventure type game. For those who've ever played with one of these books, it is a wonderful way to have interactivity with text. The idea is that you read some pages, and at the end of some pages, you might get an option, for example, to go into the desert or into some kind of ice location. And if you want to go to the desert, you go to page 20. If you want to go to the ice area, you go to page 21. And in there, you get two more choices, and you could choose, again, based on narrative, to go to page 33 or page 35. And depending on the choices you make, you might end up winning or dying, or something other tragic or happy happens. And these are color-coded to make it easy. Of course, we will not be creating such a complex story since we don't have all year, or I don't know how long the book took. Our interactive story will be a little smaller, but you can start with an animate frame here where you can illustrate or animate some things. And again, like we learned, if you make a movie clip, the animation will still play even though we're stuck on frame 1. And depending on if we choose door A or door B, we can go to one area or another. And this, instead of using pages in a book, we can use frames. So frame 1 could be our main scene. And if we choose this door, it could be frame 5 or 6 or 7, doesn't really matter. Just write it. And then this will be frame 12 or 15. And of course, you can have some kind of structure if you want, and on and on. And depending on the complexity of your animation, you can go a little simpler, maybe end here, or if you're really making simpler animations and you really want to make us experience the space, you can have more options with simpler graphics and animation. So how do we implement that in Animate? So right now, this might be our home page. And as we learned, even though we're stuck on frame 1, we can still have some interactivity. Look, got a little flips out here, and it's still raining again, or again, other animations. If we didn't put a stop action, remember, we can go back to this little monster. Oh, it's locked. We can go back to this monster, and we can take out this stop action, or in case I want it later, I can just comment it out. And so now it won't stop. It'll do its crazy thing, even though we're stuck on frame 1. Because remember, that timeline is separate. That timeline is the timeline of the movie clip symbol. And you can see here it has 4 frames, but the main scene timeline only has 1. And so we'll use our main timeline to create the different pages or different chapters or sections we go to, depending on what we want. So for example, maybe if I click on the cloud, it will take us to the cloud world. So let me make a new layer. And let's put the cloud world in frame 5. So I'm going to insert a keyframe here. And so I have a blank keyframe. I'm going to copy this cloud. Of course, you guys can create your own new graphic. But because of this is just a demo, I'm just going to reuse some graphics. So here's a cloud. And, I could say, welcome. Oh, let's use some colors you can see. Welcome to the cloud world. And in this cloud world, you can even have more options. I went ahead and made a door. I'm going to put a door A here and a door B there. Remember that you can do some color effects on them to kind of make them a little different. Let's make that one more red. All right. So what do we have for here? If we play this, well, it goes crazy. And why is that? Well, remember, even though we stopped the boat and stopped or not stopped the monster, the main timeline has no stop action. So it's going to keep playing through all these frames because it thinks it's just a plain old animation. So in this case, we're going to put a stop action on the main timeline script. And we already have a little script A there, so I'm going to use that. This is the script for our buttons. But up here on the top, make sure you don't put it in here, because this depends on if I click on something. If I do it up here, it just happens. Okay. Oh, semicolon, and remember to add this. Okay. So this main timeline we're in will stop. Okay. Remember, this makes Sam play, and this makes both Bob play, which is the rocking of the boat and him doing that weird arm swinging. Okay. So now we have this stop on frame 1 of this main timeline. So if we test that, you see we're stuck on frame 1. Alrighty. So now I'm going to click on this cloud to make us go to frame 5, which has that option. Now, where should I put that? Well, we already have this listening for a click to make Sam play. And remember, we kind of took that away. Again, we could make it do two things. We can make it Sam play, although again, it's already playing. And we can make it do something else. In this case, we do not want to tell Tam to go to frame 5. We want to, sorry, we do not want to tell Sam to go to frame 5. We want to tell our main timeline to go 5. So we can technically, hopefully, get comfortable with the fact that I can just write this. And this is the function to make us to go and stop on frame 5. There is a go to and play at frame 5, but if I do that, it's going to go to 5 and keep playing. I want it to go to frame 5 and stop there. Now, you're like, well, how did you know it's go to and play? Well, I know because I'm a little familiar with the language, but that's okay if you don't know. Remember, we have our code snippets. And what I can do is, now it might make a separate setting for that, but that's okay. It will still work. So remember, we're doing timeline navigation, and look, click go to and frame and stop there, or click go to that frame and play. If I click on the cloud, which is what I want to click on, and tell it to do go to and frame and stop there, yep, it wrote a separate whole function, and that's okay. And you can see it looks very similar to the one up here. It's this.cloud, listen for click, this.cloud, listen for click, except they just made a different function here. And again, I could have packaged them here, but that's okay. The key is, look, go to and stop, capital A, capital S, and the frame you want to go to. And if you want to go to a different frame, it tells you here, replace the number 5 in the code with the frame number you would like the playhead to move to. Now in this case, I want it to go to frame 5, so I'll leave it as that. And let's run that. And alright, so maybe it doesn't like. So I realized that I did not read these instructions as carefully. And in HTML5, frame 0 is this one, frame 1, instead of 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 would be an action to 3, but in HTML, this is 0, this is 1, 2, 3, and this is 4. So again, I could put this in here and just write it, or if you're still not comfortable with coding, remember you can use code snippets. And in this case, I'll click on the cloud, which is the thing I want to activate. And I want, if I click on the cloud, to go to and frame and stop. Remember, not play, stop at frame 4. Because remember, here it tells us it starts at 0 instead of 1. Let's see if that works. There you go. So now we have our two choices. Okay? And we can continue this story on and on. But of course, to really not get confused with our own frames and whatnot, it is very important that we create that tree chart to tell us which door goes to which frame, and so we can keep track of that. Now, of course, when we go to that frame, which remember we go to and stop, we can do the same exact thing. We can click on this door, which I made a symbol already, and I can click on this. It wants to give it a name, and I can make that go to frame, say, 9, and then this one I can make it go to frame, say, 14. Okay, and so this is the blue door, and we'll go to frame 9. So I will just add here. Blue. Okay. And then frame, what was it? I go back to the script. Frame 9 and 14, remembering that this is 0. So that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 is this one. And frame 14 is that one. So I'm going to insert keyframe here. Call that red, okay? So let's see if that works. So I go to the cloud world and I go to the blue world, okay? And I can either have a graphic that sends me back, or I can even have text that sends me back. If we choose to use text to send me back, you can do one thing we haven't covered yet. Again, you can use a graphic, make this a movie symbol, and it could be a little cartoon or whatever, but we can also make it a more traditional button. Nice little shortcut to make the button look a little nicer is you can drag on a box button and push down on your keyboard arrows, and you can bevel the edges a little bit. So I can make this button, and I can make it a button symbol. A movie clip symbol would work, but if I make it a button symbol, there's a little bit of difference in when we double click on it, and we'll talk about that in a second. But again, right now I can still give it a name. I can call it back from blue. Now, there are ways to optimize and reuse things, but for now, just make your back buttons unique until we learn more about coding. And of course, again, I can type this myself, or I can use code snippets, and that one's supposed to go back to frame 0. Remember, 0 is frame 1. So it's timeline. Click, go to in frame, click, and go to frame 0. So click on black, back from blue. Alrighty, and let's see if that works. Oh, I didn't mean to put it on our main timeline. So notice how I didn't make a keyframe for it, so when I inserted it, it just put it there. But I can either cut it. Now, if I do put it on here, I can drag that keyframe and put it there. So you see it's not here, only there. And if I do this, because I meant to put it here in the blue, you can see it drags all the way to red. Remember, I can remove all these frames so that it's only on frame this one, okay? Which is frame 10 here, but of course frame 9 in the code. And so let's test that. Go to the cloud world, I go to blue, and I go back to home. Okay. Now, the difference between a movie symbol and a button symbol is if I double click on a movie symbol, remember, we can animate things, make it do things, same here, symbol. But a button symbol has button states, which is what happens when I roll over it. So for example, when I roll over it, I can make it kind of get lighter. Oops. I need to make a keyframe for the rollover state. So it's different than this state. Okay. And so again, I can make this one a lighter blue. And what happens if I push down on it? Push down on it, I can make it purple. Now again, you may not see it because if I push down it might send me back quickly enough. And the hit area means what part of this thing will activate it. If I don't specify anything, it uses the previous keyframe to say, oh, that's the hit area. But let's say this was a small little piece of a button on a dashboard, and I want to make it easier for someone to select it. I can make the hit area really big. Let's do it on this keyframe. I can make the area really, really big. And you'll see when I roll over this area that it will activate the hand. And let's see what that works like. So let's go to the blue world, and look, rollover is light blue, okay? And notice how it's happening here. You see, I'm not touching it because of that giant hit area. Now, normally with a button like this, we wouldn't do that. We would have the hit area pretty much match the other sizes. So I can just clear this keyframe, and It doesn't matter if it's empty or if it has the frame from the previous one, but now you can see it's more sensitive to when I roll over it. And you can see it's actually purple, and then when I let go of it, it sends me home. So it must be on the click, must be activating the function when I'm done with it. And so that's creating your own adventure book. And again, you can go as crazy as you want. Again, just make sure you do that tree chart so that you don't get lost in your numbers and not knowing which door goes to what frame. That tree chart would be very, very helpful. Good luck.